Welcome to Specimen the Sociologist. It's your host, Jasmine Reichman. Now, if you couldn't tell from the title of this podcast, I have a very corny way of introducing myself, and that is Jasmine rhymes with specimen, but with a J. And I am a budding sociologist. This platform leverages sociological theories and storytelling to equip listeners with a fresh perspective on their lived experience. Now, speaking of experiences, we as a nation just witnessed one of the most iconic moments in history, and that was the 2025 Super Bowl halftime show. The Compton native and Pulitzer Prize rapper Kendrick Lamar took the stage and gave us 13 minutes worth of a performance to unpack. Whether it was the national imagery conveyed in the set design, a narrative provided by actor Samuel L. Jackson, or even the nods towards Black culture being portrayed in the backup dancer's attire, and even tennis superstar Serena Williams crip walking on the stage. Kendrick gave us a timestamp on the current social political scene of the United States, and we're going to unpack both the sociology and science behind his performance. As we dive into this episode, I would like to say that every listener has a different starting point. Whether you are a native from South Central LA, a Gen Z tech worker based in New York City, or even a white healthcare worker in a small town, we all have different engagement points to this conversation based off of our lived experience. Now, taking that into consideration, it's more important to acknowledge that there is a world that extends beyond just our lived experience, and music is an opportunity for us to come together. So let's do that with a sprinkle of science. First things first, what is sociology? Now, I remember telling family and friends that I wanted to pursue a Bachelor's of Arts in Sociology, and the two most common questions I got were one, what is it? And two, does it even pay well? And while those were very encouraging questions, it did help me fine tune a response. Sociology is the scientific study of human society, social relationships, and patterns of behavior that emerge within them. Sociologists explore how individuals are shaped by social structures, cultural norms, and institutions, and how they in turn shape society. For example, sociologists research how financial barriers impact an individual's long-term healthcare decisions, or how racial biases contribute to disproportionate police brutality against minority groups. So basically, sociologists are experts on the science behind our social lives. And quite honestly, I believe that we rule the world. But now that we understand what sociology entails, we're going to dive into our theory of the day. So, welcome to the conversation, symbolic interactionism. This micro-level theory focuses on meanings attached to human behavior, both verbal and nonverbal. With this understanding, we can now include everyday social interaction, or in this standpoint, media consumption, as a form of communication. Whether it's a song that mentally brings you back to the summertime, or a video of your parents that makes you tearful, communication is the way in which we make sense of our lives. So let me give you a elementary grade example. If I were to say the word dog, that word may evoke a very joyful feeling because you have a fuzzy friend at home. This response could be based on you having a positive experience with the dog and therefore attaching positive feelings to that word. On the contrary, someone else may have heard the same word dog and an immediate feeling of fear overcame them. This could be due to them having a negative experience, such as being bitten by one in the past. If we understand that words aren't mere words, then what would an entire Super Bowl performance have to offer its viewers? Were Kendrick Lamar's song choices just a coincidence? Why was the stage set up as a prison yard? And again, was that Serena Williams crip walking for 10 seconds? Anywho, let's break down the sociology and science behind Kendrick Lamar's Super Bowl performance. First, let's start with Kendrick as an artist. Kendrick Lamar is a highly influential American rapper, songwriter, and producer. He was born on June 17th, 1987, in Compton, California. Which, side note, he and I actually share the same birthday, and I think that's probably the biggest flex that I can have. Anywho, known for his intricate lyrics, innovative sound, and profound social commentary, Kendrick has become one of the most respected figures in modern hip hop. He gained widespread attention with his 2012 album, Good Kid, Mad City, which chronicled his experience growing up in Compton. Since then, Kendrick has consistently released critically acclaimed work, including To Pimp a Butterfly in 2015, to Damn in 2017, and Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers in 2022. Now, his music blend varies different genres, from jazz and funk to spoken word and rap, often addressing complex themes like racial inequity, mental health, spirituality, and of course, personal struggles. Lamar's ability to tackle such profound topic with authenticity and artistry has earned him numerous awards, including multiple Grammys, and actually, in 2018, he became the first rapper to win the Pulitzer Prize for music for his album Damn. Now, Kendrick Lamar is not only known for his musical talent, but also for his activism, if you couldn't tell, regularly speaking out on issues like systemic racism, police brutality, and of course, empowerment. So his work before the Super Bowl has created a lasting impact on both hip hop and broader cultural conversations at hand. Leveraging the sociological theory of symbolic interactionism, we can understand that Kendrick used symbols and language to create a meaningful experience for his viewers. While there are a great deal of symbolic meanings attached to his performance, we're going to dive into just a few. The first being the cameo featuring the award winning actor Samuel L. Jackson. Known for his love of dropping F bombs, Jackson appeared as Uncle Sam, dressed in a blue cape, striped trousers, and a star spangled top hat. Now, historically, Uncle Sam represents the personification of the US government and patriotism. However, culturally speaking, no one actually likes Uncle Sam because he also represents tax. You'll hear phrases such as, Uncle Sam took half my paycheck, which basically means you just got taxed out the hoo ha. Now, if we dive deeper, there's actually more at play because taxes in the US have a bad rap. It consists of complex systems with federal, state, and local taxes that vary widely. And the progressive federal tax system means higher earners pay more, but they often use loopholes to minimize taxes, leading to frustration among everyday workers. In addition, payroll taxes for Social Security and Medicare can hit lower earners the hardest. Which, again, this may be a shot at the fact that wealth inequality is a major issue here in the States, as those with wealth, like investments or inheritances, are taxed at lower rates than those relying on wages. Now, this creates a sense of unfairness where the wealthy seem to pay less, while middle and lower income individuals bear more of the burden. Not only does Samuel L. Jackson take a nod at Uncle Sam, he takes a nod at Uncle Tom. The term, which originates from Harriet Beecher Stowe's 1852 novel, Uncle Tom's Cabin, refers to Black Americans who turn their backs on the Black community and culture and willingly embrace subversiveness to white Americans. This is seen by Jackson chastising Lamar throughout the entire performance, with phrases such as, too loud, too reckless, too ghetto, which are clear examples of how American police Blackness. Don't believe me? Well, let's look at the science. The American Psychological Association conducted a study in 2019, and they found that over 40% of Black characters in film and TVs were portrayed as criminals or in roles associated with violence. What would be considered typical cultural phrases or mannerisms were quickly deemed too ghetto or a hazard to American culture. Now, the same study noted that these portrayals impacted societal perceptions of Black people, contributing to in life criminalization and negative biases. So, Jackson's chastisement of Lamar reflects that 2019 study pretty darn well. But while we also spoke about Uncle Tom, let's go back to Uncle Sam. Remember, tax guy? Well, one thing about Black culture is its commodification, meaning that there are a lot of ways that Black people are celebrated in pop culture and in media, but they're not properly compensated. According to a 2019 report from The Atlantic, while Black culture, particularly in fashion, music, and art, generate billions of dollars annually, Black creators see little wealth generated. For instance, hip hop and R&B are projected to generate 10.3 billion in revenue in 2022, but many Black artists face challenges in retaining control of their work or receiving fair compensation. Whether it's the policing and commodification of Black culture, to the United States' ridiculous complex tax system, or the fact that there are Black people who are considered skin folk, but they ain't kinfolk, Kendrick Lamar had a lot to say in his performance. But let's shift our perspective to our next talking point, and that is going to be about Lamar's performance set. What astonishes me the most about the Super Bowl halftime show is the limited amount of time that they actually have to set up the set. I was reading in a 2010 interview, which I know is kind of dated, but hey, still relevant. A gentleman named Charles Coughlin, a former vice president of special events for the NFL, said 6 minutes on and 6 minutes off, which suggested how much time the team actually had to put the stage together. He also went on to say that there's no way to describe it other than sheer terror, which again makes sense because the game has to go on. But this year, what was more astonishing than the setup time was the set itself. As the performance played out and Kendrick and his all black dancers spun around the field, it became apparent that they were performing on a prison yard. Critics suggest that the set was designed to highlight the issue of mass incarceration, which, why not talk about it? So, for those of my listeners who live outside the States, mass incarceration refers to the reality that the US criminalizes and incarcerates more of its own people than any other country in the history of the world, and inflicts enormous harm primarily on poor people of color. According to data from the Bureau of Justice Statistics, more than 10.7 million people entered the US jails and prisons, the equivalent of locking up every single person in Portugal, Greece, or Sweden. The unfortunate truth is that the majority of these people that we criminalize and incarcerate are Black and Latino, even though these two groups consist less than one-third of the national population. And when you think of mass incarceration, I want you to think of a network of policing, prosecution, incarceration, topics such as surveillance debt, and various other forms of social control that reproduce economic and racial inequality and oppression. Because the reality is this: you don't just lock a person up, they serve time, they come out, and they're an active participant in society again. Once a person has been entangled in the system, it harms really the rest of their life, whether it's discrimination in employment and housing, economic and education deprivation, disenfranchisement as a voter, or even being a participant as a juror. And the most critical part, which is families separated and community bonds broken. So these topics are things that actually Kendrick Lamar discussed not only in this album, but if not almost all of his albums. What's even more symbolic is that the performance took place across the skyline of New Orleans, Louisiana, a state formerly known as the mass incarceration capital of the US. Now, as a person who lived in the city of New Orleans for 5 years, it was heartbreaking to learn about nuanced layers of history, whether through my time visiting Angola State Prison, co leading mission trips in the city, to attending workshops alongside local organizers. I learned that underneath the beating heart of such a vibrant city was a big social problem that a lot of people didn't talk about. Now, while I could spend an entire 2 hours talking about this, let's return back to Kendrick Lamar's Super Bowl halftime performance. But before we do that, I would like to suggest two powerful resources to learn more about mass incarceration. The first is a film called 13th, which is a 2016 American documentary filmed and directed by Ava DuVernay. It explores the prison industrial complex and the intersection of race, justice, and mass incarceration in the US. Now, the second resource is a digital experience that invites you to sit face to face with people serving life without the possibility of parole to hear them tell their stories in their own words. This is called the Visiting Room Project, which is a website that has a collection of over 100 filmed interviews with people currently serving life without parole. The project has two primary goals. The first is to ensure that participants are able to share their story with their loved ones and community, as well as the second point is to create opportunities for the public audience to learn more about, again, the prison industrial system. Now, I am proud to say that the former professor and current chair of the Sociology department at Loyola University New Orleans, Dr. Marcus Conkar, co-created this project alongside a gentleman named Calvin Duncan. Now, Duncan is an expert in post-conviction law, following a wrongful conviction that sentenced him to life without parole and resulted in him serving 28 and a half years in Louisiana prisons. He has a story to tell, especially before his freedom came in 2011. So together, these two embarked on a mission to bring light to the realities of the U.S. criminal justice system and what it means to serve life. Now, not only is it these two gentlemen who are having that conversation, but again, Kendrick Lamar. Because it's not just by happen chance that you choose to have your set for the entire Super Bowl performance be a prison yard. But enough about Louisiana. Let's transition to a bigger topic, and that being the United States of America. During his performance of Humble, Kendrick Lamar and his dancers, who were notably all black men, formed to be an American flag, split down the middle. Now, social commentators online have suggested that this disconnected formation represents the current state of America, while others suggest that dancers represent how this country was built on the labor of Black Americans. So, to that, I say, let's look at the science. First, we're going to turn over to the Pew Research Center, which is a nonpartisan American think tank based in Washington, D.C. They provide information on social issues, public opinion, and demographic trends shaping the US and the world. In a 2020 article titled America is Exceptional in the Nature of the Political Divide, the study conducted at Pew Research Center over the course of a few years illustrated the increasingly stark disagreement between Democrats and Republicans on probably every topic you can think of, whether the economy, racial justice, climate change, law enforcement, internal affairs, and the never-ending laundry list of social issues. The article continues to describe how 77% of Americans believe that this country is divided. And it doesn't take research or really a Super Bowl halftime show to really express that belief. While this article is 5 years old, its sentiments are currently felt in 2025. Let's be honest. This past election and the first 3 weeks of the second Trump administration have revealed the depth of our social divide, and I believe that's what Kendrick Lamar was hinting at by the way that he positioned his dancers. Now, to the second point that could be taken away from Kendrick, not only the way that he positioned his dancers, but the fact that they were all Black men, may be symbolic on how this country was built on the labor of Black Americans, which unfortunately is not too far from the truth. The Center for Law and Social Policy, also known as CLASP, is a national nonpartisan anti-poverty nonprofit. They seek to advise policy solutions to improve the lives of people with low income. Now, in relation to the current work revolving around the concept of wealth and poverty, they oftentimes discuss how Black labor was foundational to the growth of America and our economy. They discuss how enslaved individuals built the country's early infrastructure and produced lucrative commodities such as cotton and tobacco. And even after emancipation, African American labor was crucial in industry, agriculture, and service. What hits home for me is that this history is not too far removed. As an African American woman myself, with roots in New Orleans, Louisiana, and Brookhaven, Mississippi, I often think back to my grandmother, Alice April Hillard, who I had the privilege of loving for the first 19 years of my life. Now, this powerful woman of God grew up in the cotton fields of Mississippi before making the big jump to move to Washington state. Now, her childhood consisted of picking cotton and various other forms of domesticated work. Now, again, my grandmother never graduated with a high school degree. And it really does go to say that we as society are only 5 to 6 generations removed from slavery. And it would be unhumane to not acknowledge how that system presents itself in our current social problems. So, we've talked about a lot in a short period of time. And while there are plenty of more symbolic examples to dive into, I want to wrap up this episode on a joyful note. During the halftime performance, Kendrick Lamar brought out the American singer and songwriter SZA to perform Luther and All the Stars from the Black Panther soundtrack. Now we're going to stop and talk about the song choice behind All the Stars, because when it came out with the movie and that soundtrack, I was having the time of my life. I was a second year down in New Orleans. I was serving as the vice president of Black Student Union. And it was just, I think it was also Black History Month. It was just so much Black goodness. Which, fun fact that people don't know, Washington State is, I don't think it's the least Black state, but it's pretty much up there, with a whopping 5% of its state population being Black. And I swear, 3% is probably my family. But anywho, going back to when the song first came out, it was just so beautiful to be in a Black city, in a Black state with my Black friends, as we're all a participant of Black Student Union. And it was just empowering because, again, going back to the movie was praised internationally for offering a positive representation of Black culture and a vision of Black power and autonomy. Anywho, back to the performance. Not only was SZA powerful and All the Stars, but there was an additional moment of Black joy that aired throughout the halftime show. And that was the queen herself, Serena Williams, who I would consider to be the tennis queen because no one else holds 23 Grand Slam titles, neither male or female, unless your name is Serena Williams. What's so powerful about Williams' story is that her rise to tennis stardom was unconventional, as she trained on public courts in Compton, California, which dun, 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 is where Kendrick is from. So to see her crip walking to Kendrick Lamar's "They Ain't Like Us" was well deserved, as she has been not only a role model and inspiration for Black Americans, but a freaking icon. And we can't end this without giving a solid reference to the one, the only, the infamous record producer and DJ Mustard. Now, with the star-studded evening, some symbolic meetings and interactions, as well as with, the sprinkle of the dancers, who I saw doing a bit of the Bay Area sneeze. Like, there was just so much to unpack. But if I can be completely transparent, it's 1 o'clock in the morning, and I am going to go to sleep. But to end this podcast with a snazzy conclusion, I just want to say this. This performance was layered with iconic pop culture moments, as well as symbolic meanings that depict American culture and history. Now, as we learned earlier from the theory of symbolic interactionism, our behavior, which includes media consumption, all have an underlying meaning. In this podcast, I leverage scientific research and data to support the meanings expressed in Kendrick Lamar's 2025 Super Bowl halftime show and how its impacts went beyond mere entertainment. So while every person may have a different opinion or belief or a hot take about his show, you can't really dismiss the deeper conversation at hand. And personally, I find it refreshing to have an artist who is willing to utilize his global platform as a mean of continuing a conversation that often doesn't take place in private. So, until next time, have a powerful day.